Welcome back to the expansion of consciousness. I'm your host, Jason Medlock. Um, we continue to have just great guests coming on, week after week, only to help you expand your consciousness, help you expand your inner self, the person that you always thought, the person that you always considered yourself to be. That's what expanding your consciousness is. Understanding key concepts to move you ahead financially, move you ahead in your spiritual walk, move you ahead in the way you want to live your life. Today, very excited. We have a spectacular guest, author, coach, just a young lady who really understands how her journey in her spiritual walk has led her to massive income and has also moved her in a way where she's coaching and teaching others and has become an author as well. Um, but the point is, stay tuned. This is going to be absolutely awesome. What happens when you take a straight A, people pleasing good girl, taught to perform for love and drop kick, um, that moved her into the tough part of a pandemic that threatened to close her seven-figure brick and mortar business? A faceplant on the kitchen floor in front of her two children, that was her wake-up call. Paden headed out to Sedona, Arizona for a week-long adventure where she met with healers and gurus who all told her she needed desperately to slow down and reconnect through true self and true calling. She needed more self and more soul care. Not having the faintest idea where to start, she kept it simple and carved out 2 hours each day to discover what made her happy. And of course, like any achiever, she put a time limit on it. And 3 weeks later, if she could fit it in her life, then she'd stick with it. In 3 weeks, she got her life back. Her sex drive shot through the roof. She didn't lash out at her kids in anger. She stopped belting with her husband. She followed her intuition as a business leader. She felt happy. Her anxiety and depression had faded away. And she felt a way to downshift her stress, up-level her self-trust, and wrote it all in a book called Takes Two that is already launched. It was September the 6th, 2022. I'm talking about an entrepreneur workaholic, a 7 to 8 figure business owner, Fortune 500 companies she's worked with. She's developed numerous professional business trainings. Without any further ado, I want to go on and bring in Miss Paden Hughes. Hello, Paden. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. Your bio is so long. I said, you know what? I better paraphrase this thing because Peyton, this woman has done a number of outstanding deeds out here, and it hadn't gone unnoticed. How are you today?
I'm so excited to be here with you. And I love talking about consciousness.
This is a consciousness platform, but we understand that consciousness is interwoven in everything we do in our everyday life. And I try to get as many business conscious people on the show so that they can give their perspective on what they do, how they do it, what revelation did they have. And you could be 90% business, but there was some type of revelation that drove you to all of the different things, self-care, how to reconnect to yourself, self-betrayal, and busyness, a lot of the things that you went through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the journey I've been on.
Wow. Well, so tell us how you started. Tell us how all this came about.
Yeah. So I'm an Enneagram 3 for those that are Enneagram junkies. And what that means is I define my worthiness by the achievements that I
Right.
being an American, I feel like that sets me up for everyone thinking that's really great news, but it also can be incredibly dysfunctional. And so I think where I found myself was, I'd been in my 20s, I was a small business consultant for 7, 8 figure businesses. I helped my husband take his passion and build that to 7 figures for our business. And I was exhausted, burned out, had given myself an ulcer by age 23. I was irritable, moody. Behind closed doors, of course, I presented a very different picture, which was this energetic, smart, ball busting, masculine energy woman who was celebrated for my toughness. And I believed that, and I had a chip on my shoulder. I was out to prove something, prove that I was good enough, prove I could make money, prove that women could do it all. I had so many chips on my shoulder trying to go in the game and compete in a fairly masculine dominated demographic in business consulting. And I basically created a version of myself that would succeed in that environment, and it was not authentic. And I think that's where I came from with my body. If I look back in the rearview mirror, it was very obvious my body couldn't cash the checks I was trying to write.
Right.
And I was annoyed by it. I was almost like, shut up. You're not allowed to have a voice. I just need you to not fail me so I can keep pushing. And it's so ridiculous to say it like that, because of course that makes no sense, but it felt so true at that time in my life.
When you're blowing and going like that, it's really hard to put a finger on who you actually are.
Yeah.
So at some point you had to say to yourself, okay, I know I'm built for this, but parts of me is not actually functioning the way that I know I should be. What brought you to the crescendo? How did you figure out something was going on?
Well, I used to blame it on my second born, my son, because as soon as that little sucker came into the world, I just for some reason felt instantly like my life wasn't good enough for me. And I felt so much guilt about that. I have 2 kids, I got a great husband, I got a business that's making good money. Why am I acting like it's not good enough for me? But it wasn't. There was this great soul discontent, I would say, since he came in. And I've heard it say that children can activate really powerful energies in their moms, but that energy felt really negative to me. All of a sudden, I didn't feel like I was in the right job. I wasn't doing the right thing. Nothing that I did was making any sense for me. And then the pandemic hit. And what wasn't good for me became this ultimate game of survival. And I even wrote a piece for Forbes about how in 2020, it felt like all of us non-essential entrepreneurs were watching some NFL game, but then surprise, you're actually playing in the arena and everyone's watching you try to survive.
Yes.
And so instead of attending this event as an entrepreneur, you're actually going to be the one in the spotlight fighting for your survival, and everyone's watching you. And I crashed and burned so hard saving the business, keeping everyone employed, not putting anyone on unemployment, trying to live my values as an entrepreneur and be a mom and stay married, all these things that are just so stressful.
A major juggle that probably a lot of men don't really realize, but that is a major juggle.
It is. And then being the default parent, and then managing, people testing positive and negative and trying to save our business. And I was in total denial that I was having stress in my life. If anyone would have asked me, this is how disassociated I was from my body and my soul, if anyone would have asked me, I would have said, I'm fine. I would have actually viewed myself as some kind of inspirational role model at a time when I was truly depleting myself to the point where I face planted in the middle of the day from chronic stress in front of my 2 small children, and I couldn't move my body for half an hour.
Wow.
And that was to date my lowest moment and got my full attention.
So you had that revolution, and typically when you have any type of stress or any type of depression or anxiety, there's typically a number of other things that's an oil spill in the life. Stress is the top lining issue. Were there any other things that were pulling at you that you said, you know what, this has got to stop?
Yeah. I ended up going to Sedona on what's called a soul adventure and meeting with some healers after that epic face plant. And I basically realized I don't care what I need to do. I can't clearly, I'm 34 years old. If my body's giving out on me, like, what do I have to look forward to here? This is, and I'm a borderline hypochondriac. So I think that that really shook me. And so I went to Sedona not even knowing the answer to that question, truly. I don't know that I was even that tuned in. And so after going through some incredible somatic healing experiences or just beautiful like coach breakthrough moments and them telling me, Paden, like, let's get to the childhood wound here. And I'm like, there's a childhood wound? And
yes. Yes, it is. You're speaking my language. Yes, it is.
Yeah, and we did. And basically the read me a list of all these wounds that we might have. And the one that feels like you have a visceral physical reaction to is probably the one that's home base. And the one that I cringed at and my stomach twisted for was, I'm not good enough.
Wow.
And I had
all the success and the education, the family, the kids, and then to find that I have a pain inside that I'm not good enough. How did you take that?
I mean, it felt so sad and so true. And we did inner child work along with that. So then I'm like witnessing in my mind, in my imagination, this 7-year-old version of me that is believing she's not good enough. And that from that moment on, the trajectory of that chase has been brutal. It's yielded some great results for sure. People will be impressed with. But internally, it was a devastating awareness that had been running the show. Because you want to believe that your success is connected to your mission, your purpose, your power, your heart. And to recognize that your success has actually been rooted in a deep wound and dysfunction is a real wake-up call.
But the upward swing motion of finding it, analyzing it, bringing it forth, and moving it out is astonishing, isn't it?
It was incredibly beautiful and powerful.
Yes.
And probably one of the first experiences I really had was self-compassion. So then that was this awareness of just how hard I was on myself, how much I pushed myself, how much I never cheered for myself, how much I never was kind to myself. And that was this sad but healing moment to realize, at the end of the day, the only person you have in your life that you wake up every day with, that is with you through every felt experience, is you. And if you don't have a good relationship with you, that's miserable.
Yes. I tell clients of mine, talk to your body, talk to yourself, because you can hear you. And it's not something crazy to do. You can actually hear you, and you can actually direct you. You can heal yourself. There are a lot of things you can do. And you can reprogram your mind to be one of the sharpest finance people in the world if you want to.
Huge. But if you can't slow down to even hear yourself, it's hard to know that that's true. And at least for me, in that moment in time, if someone would have said, you need to reconnect to yourself, I would have been like, I get that sounds smart. How? Because I'm so literal. I was so left brain in my power. My power, I believed, was all in my head, all in my left brain. I'm a strategy queen. Don't have feelings. Those don't exist, because to be a badass in business, I didn't think you could be heart-centered. I didn't think you could be a feeler, because I didn't see feelers and heart-led people over dominating the industry. You see the opposite. And so I'm trying to, like, as a little chameleon, basically. My superpower growing up was I knew who I had to be to succeed in any room I walked into, which is kind of creepy on one hand and definitely cool on other hands. But I always knew what was required of me to win. And I would show up in that energy. So my true devastation was I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Mm.
I was so disconnected from my energy that if someone were to say, listen to your body, I'd have been like, there's a body? Like, I don't even know. I was so out of it that remember seeing the wound, and then the childhood wound was so powerful for me to realize that I had been pushing myself beyond my authentic self to perform and succeed, and really for love and to be good enough.
So obviously, the outside constructs, which is the business and the
Yeah.
world and moving and family, those are the constructs. And the stresses of all of that, obviously you reacted to it in a highly sensitive way.
Yeah.
And you came to this realization. How did
Yeah.
you come to the realization that you were a highly sensitive person? And what was that like?
Well, I like to say I got my ass handed to me by the German Buddha, and that's what I call her. She's my life coach to this day. Her name's Kamala Road, and she is a powerful master coach and intuitive. And she spoke to me, and I sat down in Sedona. So it's like, we've done the inner child healing. I now realize I've been running this horrific script in my life from a place of woundedness. And then I sit down and she goes, before I said a thing, she goes, I have you as this highly ambitious, overachieving, workaholic woman who's running completely away from the reality that she is a highly sensitive person. And you're acting like your body's a Lamborghini when really it's a Toyota Tacoma.
Wow.
And I was
I
like,
already want her number.
like, what? In 3 minutes, she's got me down. And I'm like viscerally uncomfortable with the fact that she got me nailed. But I also didn't know what she meant by sensitive. So I said, no, I don't think I'm sensitive. Like, I don't relate to that. And she goes, that's okay. Of course you don't relate to it. You've been running from that too. I'm like, great. Now I'm running from not being good enough. What is the next thing I'm running from, guru? And she says, you are highly sensitive. Let me prove it to you. And she goes through Dr. Elaine Aron's 25 statements that if you answer yes to more than 14 of them, there's a very high chance that you have the trait. So it's not a disorder, it's a trait around being highly
So
sensitive.
she pulled out some data on you.
Oh yeah, because she knew she wasn't going to get to my heart like in
Right.
that moment. She did, of course, but like she knew she had to intellectualize it with me. And so I
No
said
brainer.
yes to 24 out of 25 statements. And I was shocked because the statements were things I was embarrassed about. Things like, do you get irritable when you're in uncomfortable fabric? And I'm like, yes. Like, do you get really hangry? Yes. Like, does music and art make you cry? Yes. Like, I could bawl from a traumatizing movie for hours and feel like I don't know why I can't stop crying, and she would say, do you get freaked out by really loud and surprising noises? And I'm like, oh yeah, like I will smack. I want to throat punch somebody that comes behind me with a big noise. Like, it just freaks me out. So she keeps going and I'm like, wait, these are all parts of me that I've never understood, never honored. Like, what is this list? What does this mean? And she starts to go into, like, basically, I'm neurodivergent. I think differently. I have a deeper processing and I take in far more stimuli than 80% of the population, meaning my nervous system is different than 80% of the population. And that means I blow up faster. I fill up. If I'm like a tank, I can only handle so much pressure before it's predictable that I'm going to lose it on somebody or myself. But I'm hitting that faster than everybody else. And it was such a place of judgment and shame for me because I knew she was right. My family would walk on eggshells around me. And I could tell that they would do that. And I didn't know how to tell them not to do that. But it was like this over controlling type A mom in the family. Don't mess with mom. Like, that was absolutely who I was in my household. And I didn't like that part of me.
So you're in Arizona,
Yeah.
and you're face to face with your match, basically your life coach. So you're there and you're going through all these things. What did you take back with you that changed everything?
She actually asked me, she said, you need more alone time because you need to depressurize your system. And HSPs, or highly sensitive people, need alone time. And she told me what do you want to do about this? And it was the first time I could tell you my intuition blurted something out of my mouth that scared the crap out of me. And
Wow.
what I said in that moment was, I need to take 2 hours a day to be alone. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Why would I say that? I don't have 2 hours a day. Like, that might be the most triggering thing I have ever even heard, much less I'm the one that said it. And but she said, at least, like, you at least need 2 hours. And I'm like, oh my gosh, thank God I didn't serve up like 3 hours, because I'm sitting there trying to figure out how 2 hours is going to even make any sense. But as soon
Right.
as I said it, I felt a relief flood over my body. And it
Mm.
was really this moment of, that is true. So I need to figure out how to make this work. So my
Wow.
marching orders from that was, okay, I don't know who I am. I clearly am sensitive and been faking that for decades, and then trying to be strong. And then I'm not good enough. So I don't even know who I am anymore, because I've become everything everybody else wanted me to be. And I'm super sensitive, which is something I've hated about myself, but it's part of me. So I can either hate it or I can find a way to integrate it, but I don't even know what to do. So apparently now I'm taking 2 hours a day. And it was right before Thanksgiving in 2020. And so in my head on the plane back from Sedona, I'm like, how do I sell this to my husband? Like, what's the play here? Like, he's already watching the two children, babysitting the
Right.
businesses. He's running our businesses for us for a whole week, so I can go on this little sabbatical. I'm going to come back and go, also, I'm going to work 10 hours less per week so I can be happy. Like, that's an interesting moment. And in the plane, I'm like, how am I pitching this? Like, how am I serving this up with him? And I basically just said, okay, I'm going to give it a trial. It was right before Thanksgiving, and it's a slow time in our business. So I said, what if I just trialed it between Thanksgiving and Christmas and just saw, is that long enough to run like a test to see what would happen? And I thought, yeah, I'm pretty sure that would be good enough. And within 7 days, I remember so much changed for me. I knew I couldn't stop. Like, it was a lifeline that I didn't even know I needed. But once I got it, it was like I never realized I was thirsty. And all of a sudden I tasted water. And I was like, I can't not have this in my life. I have to figure this out.
Mm. What's the hardest part of being a highly successful entrepreneur, but then on the flip side, being a highly sensitive person?
The hardest part is when you're dysregulated.
Hmm.
Um, and you're overstimulated and you're pushing yourself to stay in the game when you need to take a break. It's admitting the humanness of you. What helped me to do that was recognize how amazingly powerful I was if I honored my sensitivity. For example, the two traits that HSPs have beyond anybody else is that we are insane problem solvers.
Mm.
We are, because it's that neurodiverse mind that like is like I always say is like a police detective's wall, where they're like tying string to this random fact and this clipping and this person, and like our brains are constantly collecting stimuli and connecting dots. And so when we show up in our strength to problem solve, we come up with the most crazy solutions that work. And it's what had made me successful as an entrepreneur and a consultant. But I couldn't expect myself to be on like that 10 hours a day, when really research shows us you can't get in a flow state for more than 4 hours in any 24-hour period of time. So I started to play with, what if I only worked 4 hours? Well, I'm an entrepreneur, so I have a little bit of play with that.
Hmm.
So I was like, what if I could get in a flow state for 4 hours a day? Like, could I replace my 8-hour workday? And why not try it? So that was one thing. The second thing is intuition. We have more mirror neurons activated. What that means is that we're able to read people and empaths, like I'm like
Yes.
a school of fish. Like, I love the idea of like the analogy of the school of fish, where like how do they all know how to turn together? Well, they have more mirror neurons activated as they're doing that. So I know how to, that's what my superpower was, right? Like, I could read the room and who I had to be. Like, I was basically being a fish in the school of fish, trying to like ebb and flow my way with the crowd. But when I realized that it was also connected to me having more receptivity in the insula in our brain, it was called the seat of consciousness, that I actually was more spiritual. or at least was more interested in spirituality and had a very vibrant inner world.
Right.
Through meditation and some of these tools that I have since learned, I realized I could solve these problems intellectually or spiritually. There were two paths that I had that were unique. And if I didn't rest and power down, I wouldn't be as powerful. So those were really, really big breakthroughs for me.
So we're going to talk about your book now. I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. And is that it right there? There we go. We're going to go ahead and
I was
share
gonna
it.
say, I can show it to you.
There it is. Okay. Okay. That's your best-selling book, Take Two. Um, how a simple daily habit increase your health, your wealth, and happiness. You also talk about taking 2 hours a day that we just talked about for self-care. So what was the hardest part of making all these changes you had to make happen? And this book, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, she is a Amazon best-selling author. Okay, you need to check out Paden Hughes. I'm telling you, check her out. But what was the hardest part of making that happen? And I'm going to include her website at the bottom, so it'll be right there if you want to go ahead and order her book.
The hardest part of doing it was facing down rejection and my own mom guilt. I had a lot of mom guilt, just like walking out of my house, leaving a babysitter with my children so I could go wander in the hills and find myself. Like that felt really, I judged myself. I came from a much more traditional background where women were moms and that was what they did. And if you were a good mom, you would be a present mother. But the problem with me as a highly sensitive mother was me being present wasn't always good. Because if I was a dysregulated version of myself, meaning I was more irritable, more unhinged, more moody, more just like my vibration was super stressful, who wants to be around that? I didn't even like that version of me. So me being a more present mom was not the answer. Me being a regulated, calm, and grounded mom was. But I couldn't do that without alone time. So for me, the hardest part was facing down my inner resistance to what I needed and then outer resistance. I got a ton of rejection and a lot of pressure from my family, from my friends, from communities going, you are about as privileged as it comes sitting over here trying to take your 2 hours every single day. Like, what are you doing? You're a joke. And it was really hard for me because I'd been a people pleaser my whole life.
Yes.
That was a hard one.
So you mentioned, your children and motherhood. What's the hardest part about motherhood? You are a highly successful entrepreneur, author, mom, wife. But what's the hardest part about motherhood that people don't talk about, and most women don't talk about?
Yeah, this is a great question. The hardest part about motherhood is everyone sells it to you like it's going to fulfill every part of your heart, and it's going to be the hat that you wear with the most pride. And when you're a highly sensitive mom and when you're a mom with children under a certain age, it's miserable. I'm sorry, my experience, my perspective, nobody prepares you for how isolating it is. Nobody prepares you for how much you will be basically to be considered a good mom in our culture, at least the way other moms prop it up to each other, is you will give every part of you up for 10 years per child. Yeah. So if you have multiple children, what we're being asked to do is to shelve, be needless, to be sexy, to be successful, to be smart, to be on, to do it all, to be the default parent, and to do it relentlessly. And only then can we be considered good enough. And every mom is dying in isolation and seriously having mental health problems. Like the UN just identified women in the US as one of the most at-risk populations for psychological distress in 2020.
Well, you're listening to Expansion of Consciousness. We're going to reset real quick. I'm Jason Medlock. I'm your host, and I have with me author, coach, Paden Hughes, highly successful business entrepreneur. And her best-selling book, Takes Two. Go to Amazon, pick this book up. Go to her website, Paden, Paden, Hughes, Hughes.com. Paden, you're in the top 2% of female entrepreneurs out there. What costs and sacrifices did you have to make? And would you advise others to follow the same path that you followed?
Um, what I would say made a decent amount of sacrifices. I also come from a lot of privilege. So like I roll into the room and people expect me to win. So that I had that rolling in with me. Like I acknowledge that for sure. And then what I came from was a family that basically taught me work ethic is our in your bloodline. Like you can't fight it. You're going to work hard because it's what we do. And so I worked 100 hours. I remember I volunteered and worked 100 hours during college to put myself through college on top of schoolwork, which is insane. When I go back and go, what was I doing for 4 years? Like I had no life. When my husband and I started our business together, I was working. We didn't take more than a 3-day weekend for 5 years straight.
I know what you mean. God.
We together, I think, made $50,000 for the first 6 years through our business together. In California, that's below poverty line. So
Right.
There was that. While everyone was like, you're so glamorous having your own business, we were hustling. And it felt like we were just hitting our heads up against walls. And so that was hard. It was hard to watch everybody. My husband was driving a Vespa to save money on gas. Like we were really just doing some funky stuff just to try to, keep it all together. And when we started to make money and started to see it work for us, we became obsessed about taking that money and investing it and still maintaining a kind of a shoestring budget life. Yeah. So we've been smart with as the world would say, you've been great on investing your sweat equity into anything that would, be potentially profitable. Thankfully It was, and then you've got all this money, but you're just storing it away and trying to grow it on the side. And I had read somewhere that, the average millionaire has 7 different revenue streams. So we started getting obsessed about creating 7 different revenue streams. Like anything down to like, could we Turo a car and turn that into some car rental income? Like, could we rent out our garage and make money to help pay the mortgage? So we've always been scrappy like that. And that definitely helped. Would I recommend, this is a lesson I'm standing in,
right,
in some level, because I don't see a lot of entrepreneurs actually succeeding without a degree of hustle in the beginning. Mm-hmm. But then what I'm starting to see a lot of is people saying there's another way other than hustle, but almost always the people saying that have already hustled and made success. So it's like everyone wants to say I do believe that you can make your path easier. I think intuition plays a huge role in that. I think self-care plays a huge role in that. Do I think that would have helped me early on? Yes. Did I learn a lot and still feel like there was reward through the struggle? Also, yes.
So you mentioned earlier being a people pleaser. So how did that impact your success?
Well, it basically meant that I over-delivered because I didn't think I was good enough, which is a root fear for a lot of people pleasers. And it was also rooted in the way I grew up. And in the way I wanted to, I was one of 5 children and my parents were busy and awesome. And I wanted everyone's approval. And so it became, what's going to get people's attention? How do I get people's attention? How do I perform? And that came back to performance. Now, that was not a conscious decision on anyone's part. It's not like they said, how can we make Paden push her into this people pleasing? But that's definitely what I absorbed as a child was, when I serve other people and give other people what they want from me, I should get it back. This should be the law of reciprocity. I mean, you're not thinking that at age 8, but that's the universal law we think is going into motion. And it always left me emotionally bankrupt, energetically bankrupt. I've never seen a person really at least with entrepreneurship and motherhood stacked on it, perhaps, I've never actually seen that equation work out in the way people wish it would. And so it just contributed to the burnout, and it contributed to the feelings of resentment that people weren't giving back to me what I was giving to them, and feeling angry about that.
We were speaking about hustling and that whole hustle culture, which can be toxic. But so tell me what's toxic about the hustle culture? But as an entrepreneur,
Yeah,
even you've embodied the hustle culture to get results.
totally. And I would say, like, it's like anything, like there's like it's like, have you ever read the book, I forget the author's first name, but his last name's Keller. It's called One Thing, and his concept is that every one of us can pendulum into hustle, but has to, for as long as we're out there, has to pendulum into total rest and relaxation. And then somewhere in the middle is where there's more of this equilibrium, sort of like masculine, feminine energy, same concept. Like when you go to either extreme of like driven push, like there's a toxic side to that too, because you're basically treating yourself like a computer instead of a human being with a beating heart. So the toxic side is to believe that you're only as good as your achievements, and that you can't take a break because otherwise you're weak. And then it becomes this addiction to, I'm busy, so it's a badge of honor. I'm doing things and achieving things, so I can't stop. And then we end up getting ourselves into places of disease be manifesting in our body. We get ourselves in this place where we're not mentally healthy. We're emotionally toxic ourselves, and trying to have healthy relationships, but we're not in a good space as ourselves. And then we can feel really hopeless, depressed, and anxious. I believe hustle culture is absolutely detrimental to sustain at prolonged periods. I think that it's fun to sprint, but you can't sprint 10 marathons back to back.
Yeah, and more than likely it leads to burnout, as you say, and rarely leads to success.
Yeah.
So that's that in itself really explains a whole lot. So I know that you were under a lot of stress and burnout, and you figured out a way to really move yourself from that. So how'd you stop lashing out to the people you love? Being highly sensitive.
Yeah. So this is the dark side of sensitivity. And the more I connect with highly sensitive people, the more we have this unspoken place of deep shame, which is, I only will show my depletion and my state of total helplessness when I feel safe. And who do I feel safest around? People I love the most. So unfortunately, the people I love the most see me at my absolute worst because I don't even have any more energy to fake it for them. And so what was happening was I wasn't taking care of myself. So I was angry at the people closest to me for not taking care of me. But it was like this, basically, it's like the lashing out was really myself, my soul crying out for my needs to be met. And so often what we look for other people to give us is what we need to give ourselves. And so what I wanted was someone to give me a break, somebody to help me relax, someone to allow me to depressurize, to co-regulate my nervous system. I wanted a big hug for like 30 minutes. I wanted all these things. And it's like, when you're also married to an entrepreneur who's also busy, who also is a dad of 2 kids, that became hard. And I would end up being irritable and saying mean things from a place of just being depleted and angry at myself. But I was in a full victim consciousness, and I was quicker to blame him than I was to take ownership for anything. And I mean, I had to seriously apologize and continue to model emotionally safe behavior. Because it's not enough to say, honey, I'm sorry, I've been screwing up and I've been a shrew to you behind closed doors. And like, I'm super sorry. I don't know how you're still around me and I love you. It was like, there's that, but there's also this fact, okay, like, where are your receipts? So show up consistently as an emotionally regulated version and watch me become safe for him to relax around. Which was the first time we achieved that in our marriage, was when I was taking my alone time. He was actually able to be himself.
Wow. The power of nervous system regulation.
It really is. And I didn't even know what that phrase meant for a while, even when I was doing my 2 hours. And then I realized, oh my gosh, all of these therapists and all these wise people I follow are all talking nervous system regulation.
Hmm.
They're all saying stop talk therapy. So many of us are lost in our, not stop, sorry. I should say that's not the only path, because too many of us are locked into our heads, are completely believing like we can talk ourselves in and out of things, and we're too cerebral, and we're missing the soul connection. The head and the heart is completely disconnected, and the wisdom's in the body. You've got to get into the feelings. Your feelings are messengers, they're not inconveniences. Your body is deeply wise, it's also sending you wisdom. Are you willing to listen to it? Because I think a lot of us are taught that our logic brain is really what we can trust. And our heart, I grew up really Christian, so I was taught my heart was deceptively wicked and likely
No.
to throw me off course. So I straight up didn't trust anything that felt like a heart passion. So that was a big part of my journey, was like, I don't trust my body. I don't trust my feelings. I can only trust my thinking. But then I got depressed and anxious, and my thoughts became really hard to manage.
Wow. What a fabulous, fabulous conversation. We're running out of time here. But Peyton, I want to give you the opportunity to, do you have a special offer? Do you have anything that you want to add to the conversation? How can people find you? I'm going to put your website back up, but
Yeah,
what's
thanks.
coming up new? Is there anything exciting you're going to be doing?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit, Peyton.
Yeah, so I've got a couple ways to work with me. First, you can buy my book. It's a great, entertaining read or audiobook. I also narrated it on Audible, so it's easy for those that are actually that are too busy to pick up a physical book. You can ride around, run errands, and listen to it and laugh with me at myself as I learn these things. And then you could also work with me one-on-one. I do take coaching clients. If people are wanting, specifically, I work with highly sensitive working moms. I think those are my people, because we have such a unique amount of pressure, and my story can lend itself to how to walk out of that. But I also have an amazing program that's a 4-month program. That's a combination of being live coached and have online curriculum. That's called Sensitive and Successful. And it really helps to anyone who thinks you're highly sensitive, that's trying to hack a way to unhustle yourself, try to figure out how to manifest, try to figure out how to use and unlock your intuition. And I can help walk you through what I have used and help my clients use as tools to guide that discovery.
Turning my message into my message. Take two.
That's
Uh,
right.
Paden Hughes. It was fabulous having you on. I want you to stay with me. I'm gonna move you to the back office. I'm gonna close this thing out. And thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
stay with
you.
us. Stay with us. Hold on for a second. Wow. The story of a fabulous executive mom, 7-figure entrepreneur, speaker, podcaster, best-selling author. What more can you ask of a professional woman who has to take care of her family and take care of kids as well, and then run a business? But to find out, to have a revelation that you are sensitive, and to have the revelation that you're not good enough. But the key is to be able to fight back through it, to identify the issues, to identify the problems. And that's why we do this show. And I specifically wanted Paden to come on because of her background in business. And many of you, just because you found a path for your awakening, or you may have already arrived at your awakening, most of us still work and we have professional careers. And blending those careers with your self help and your worth and your health and wellness is very important. I want to thank you guys for joining us for another fabulous talk on expansion of consciousness. And we thank Paden, and you guys support Paden. She has a fabulous book out there, and she can really help a lot of women, a lot of men who are sensitive and are living this strong, healthy, professional life, but may need help identifying areas that have pain. Thank you guys very much, and God bless, and we'll see you the next time. Goodbye.